The day my mom chased me down the street with a broom, making me duck and weave like a stray dog. That was when the black car pulled up, its presence so out of place it felt like a shark had surfaced in a puddle. Two strangers stepped out, perfected and polite in a way our block never was. The man moved with quiet authority. The woman's jewelry flashed in the sun, while her eyes leaked red. They looked at me like someone who had been waiting, like they had cross-checked my name against a life they already believed in. My mother stopped mid-swing, broom still in the air, shrinking a little under their gaze. She hissed an insult at me, half-muttered, and mostly defeated. I barely noticed. When the woman lunged forward and gripped my dirt-edged hand, tears instantly spilling from her, my face went still. Nice performance, I thought. Then, as if my world now came with subtitles, snippets of commentary drifted across my vision, ghostly and amused. She beat up 3 collectors last week, no joke. Old man Hemlock's goose hides when she walks by. The only ones getting hurt here are the local thugs. I stared. A living stream commentary, great. My mouth stayed closed. The man in the suit introduced himself, with measured sorrow and an explanation stitched from pity and paperwork. Richard Hawthorne, he said, we are your birth parents. 17 years ago there was a hospital mix-up, they said, and we've come to bring you home. He glanced at our crumbling stoop and at my mother's broom, then added, awkwardly, that there was another girl back at their house, a daughter who was quiet and fragile. They promised to treat us both fairly. The commentators did what commentators do, flooding the air with breathless tropes. Classic. The real heiress appears. Cue the chaos. I want the catfight. No, wait, the fake has a stutter. She's a wreck. The rich kids love to humiliate her. Stutter, timid, bullied in bathrooms, forced to kneel and bark like an animal. I read it all and felt nothing but a twitch in my jaw. I don't have much patience for people who can't stand up for themselves, and I have even less for staged pity or manufactured helplessness. My hands started to ache at the thought. No thanks, I said, and turned away toward our crooked front door. I told them to go back to wherever they'd come from. But the idea of leaving something defenseless to be trampled made me sharper. My fists itched. So I surprised them. I yanked open the car door, slid into the leather seat, and told them we were leaving, now. Richard fumbling for a briefcase, my adopted parents aghast at the sudden exchange. I rolled down the window and warned them I would get out if there were any delays. The case was dropped instantly. As the car moved away from the alley and into a quieter part of town, Eleanor Hawthorne tried small talk. Movies, shopping, normalities. I shut it down with one word. Fighting, I said, closing my eyes. Silence followed. The commentators exploded with laughter, and for once, I didn't care. The Hawthorne estate looked like it belonged in a travel brochure for old Europe, except it had the strange hush of a place that polishes its own memory. A butler bowed, carpets swallowed sound, and the foyer glowed with chandeliers so ornate they made the marble look ordinary. From the stairs came a quiet, broken sob. I looked up and saw a girl in a pale dress, wobbling on the landing like she might collapse. Her face was blotched and swollen, her lips trembling until the words came out in splinters. I'm sorry, she stammered, voice thin. That was Lila Hawthorne, the one the comments had called a frail, stuttering heiress. She looked like someone who had been frightened into silence, and the sight of her made something in me snap. Boredom, irritation, disgust at anyone being trampled by bullies, and a personal loathing for manufactured helplessness combined into a single, dangerous impulse. I pushed through the crowd and asked, blunt as a knife, who had done this to her. Lila shrank and spilled the answer, breathless and broken. It was M. Marcus, the B bathroom. Her stutter grated against my nerves, like a chalk scrape. Enough, I snapped, cutting her off, and then turned to Richard. Transfer me to her school. Now. They hesitated, perhaps picturing the social niceties of the upper world. I let my patience run out. Fine, don't, I said, voice low, and I'll tear this living room apart to convince you. The threat landed the way it was meant to. They believed I would do it. The comments went wild, triumphant and delighted. I didn't care for the applause. I cared for the answer, and for the clean, necessary business of making sure no one else would get hurt if I could stop it. The next morning, I stood outside Blackwood Prep, a palace of privilege masquerading as a school. My uniform was stiff and ill-fitting, my backpack empty, my resolve full. The floating commentary, as always, acted as my unofficial guide. Alert! High-energy chaos zone ahead. Grade 11, Class 3. Marcus, Thorn's Kingdom. Class 2 has the fragile heiress. She's already being harassed. Go. Big sis-style justice, maximum pain, zero mercy. I didn't hesitate. The back door of Class 3 opened to my stride. Inside, a blonde-haired boy had his foot perched on a chair, snapping rubber bands at a smaller student, while his crew laughed like it was a comedy show. Marcus, I guessed, by the arrogance radiating off him. I knocked once on the frame. Silence fell. Every eye tracked me like a predator in the room. Marcus lazily turned, smirk plastered across his face. New kid? What do you want? My gaze swept past him to the boy who'd been targeted, then to the others. My voice was calm, but carried the edge of steel. Yesterday, who cornered a girl in the bathroom and forced her to kneel and bark like a dog? Marcus froze. The smirk faltered. Who are you? Mind your own business. One stout lackey snickered. What? This hillbilly's defending that stammering girl? I nodded once. Good. Target confirmed. In the next instant I moved. The crony didn't even react before I yanked him by the collar and slammed his near 180-pound frame against the wall. The thud vibrated through the room. He slid down, stunned, a limp heap. I cracked my knuckles, icy calm as my gaze swept the room. So it was you, I said, voice flat. Marcus leapt up, chair scraping. You're dead. A corner of my mouth lifted. Not a smile, a warning. No. You are. He lunged, a sloppy, overconfident punch. I didn't flinch. As his knuckles grazed me, I caught his wrist in a flash. A sharp twist. Crack. Marcus squealed, momentum throwing him forward. My knee drove into his stomach. Gasps and choked noises replaced his bravado, and before he could recover, I yanked his hair, smashing his head onto the terrazzo. Thwack. The room went silent. Marcus lay curled on the floor, blood dripping from his nose, eyes wide with terror. 5 seconds. That was all it took. The other students froze. The once arrogant crew stared at me as though I were a predator, their faces pale, legs trembling. The comments exploded. Holy, total takedown. Street Fighter versus Rich Boy Dojo, owned. Faceplant. Ouch. Big sis is unstoppable. Loyal sim status, engaged. Blackwood Prep just got a new queen. I shook my wrist, as if brushing off an insect, then addressed the crumbling lackeys. Either squat in the corner yourselves, or I can help you. They flinched as if shocked, then scrambled to a corner, hands on heads, lining up perfectly, like soldiers. I ignored them. I grabbed Marcus by the collar and dragged him down the hall, a parade of silent, horrified students parting before us. The chatter rose, then died whenever my eyes passed over the crowd. We reached the girls' bathroom. Yes, the same one where they'd terrorized Lila. Crash. I kicked the door open. Screams echoed as girls fled. I dragged Marcus to the last stall, the scene of the crime. He collapsed, bruised and bloody. I looked down at him, cold as winter. Yesterday. Right here. You made her kneel. He couldn't speak. Only terror answered. Bark like a dog? He shook his head violently, sobs mingling with his shame. I was wrong. Big sis, please. Kneel. He obeyed, trembling. Bark. His voice came out weak, strangled. Woof woof. I scowled. Louder. Where's all that energy from yesterday? The pathetic yelps echoed through the empty bathroom, grotesque and humiliating, a punishment fully delivered. The crowd in the corridor gaped, a single held breath that refused to be released. No one moved to help Marcus, and no one dared come any closer. An eye for an eye, yes please. I could watch this on repeat forever. A bit harsh, but damn, she handles herself. You don't go easy on scum like that. A small, quavering voice drifted from the doorway. Sister. I turned. Lila stood there, pale and trembling, fingers white on the doorframe. She stared at Marcus on the floor, disbelief and a faint, awkward relief flickering in her eyes. Mostly, though, she looked terrified, as if I myself might be worse than the boy she had feared. What is it? I asked, still calm. She sniffled, barely audible. Teach the teachers, the dean's office, they're coming, a lot of them. Down the hall, a line of administrators in suits, flanked by security, was moving toward us, faces carved into indignation. Perfect, the cavalry had arrived. I crouched, close enough to Marcus to let my breath curl in his ear, and said quietly, "This was just the appetizer. From now on, Lila Hawthorne is under my protection at this school." I tapped his cheek, not gentle. "You, or any of your friends, lay a hand on her again, or make her cry one more time." I let the sentence hang, letting a dry smile settle on my lips. "I'll break a leg. I keep my promises." The ugly hope in his eyes dissolved into pure terror. He shook harder. I rose, ignoring the rising noise and the approaching footsteps. I smoothed a non-existent wrinkle in my uniform and walked out into the hall. I hesitated only for a beat by Lila, frowning at how frightened she still looked. "What are you scared of?" I said bluntly. "Come on." Then, with every head turned and the dean hurrying closer, I took Lila's trembling hand and walked her straight toward the posse of adults who had come to handle things. We stepped up to the cluster of administrators. The man leading them, the dean of students, had gold-rimmed glasses and hair plastered back with too much pride. He jabbed a finger at me. You're the transfer student? This is anarchy." Assaulting a student in class, dragging him to the bathroom for public humiliation. "Do you have any respect for the rules of this institution?" The security guards behind him bristled. The comments chimed in with their running commentary. Here come the talking points. "Dean, do you even know who started the humiliation? That kid's clearly paid by the Thorne family. Look at his hair." "Go, big sis." I pulled Lila a little closer and met the dean with the kind of calm that made people uneasy. "Rules," I said. "Is there a rule that says it's okay to corner a girl in the bathroom and force her to kneel and bark like a dog?" The dean's face flushed. "That was a minor disagreement between students. It would have been handled by the teachers. Your use of violence is unacceptable. You were brutal." "A minor disagreement?" I stepped aside to show him the bloodied, kneeling boy. "You call this a minor disagreement? The standards for disagreements here are unusual, aren't they?" A few students snickered. The dean, red and rattled, tried to regain control. "You're twisting this. Marcus Thorne will be dealt with, but your actions were worse. You must be punished. Come with me to the office. And you, Lila Hawthorne, you're involved in this as well." Lila flinched back behind me. My eyes went cold. Dealt with how? A demerit? A forced apology? Then he comes back and retaliates harder. I took a step forward. The street-forged thread in my stance made the dean unconsciously retreat. "And her? How exactly is she involved, besides being bullied until she cried?" "Your talent for blaming both sides is impressive." "You insolent," the dean barked. He signaled the guards. "Take her away." Two hulking men moved to seize my arms. I didn't flinch. I stared at them, and the raw violence in my expression made them hesitate. "Touch me, I dare you," I said, voice low and steady. "You'll call it self-defense. If someone's arm comes out of place, I'll pay the bills myself." They froze, remembering what I'd just done to Marcus. They knew I wasn't bluffing. The standoff felt like a taut wire, ready to snap. A female voice cut through the tension. "Dean Williams. What's going on here?" A woman in a professional blazer stepped forward, probably in her 30s. Ms. Evans, the grade 11 supervisor, had arrived. Her eyes widened at the sight of Marcus sprawled in the bathroom and the heated confrontation. "Ms. Evans. Just in time. Look at the new student. She's completely out of control." Dean Williams crowed, like she'd saved the day. Ms. Evans gestured for the guards to stand down, then turned her attention to me. "Zoe Hawthorne, correct? I'm Ms. Evans, your grade supervisor. Can you explain what happened?" I stayed silent, glancing back at Lila. The younger girl met my gaze, then focused on Ms. Evans. Mustering her courage, she spoke, her stutter still present, but tempered with new strength. "MS. Evans, it was Marcus yesterday in the B bathroom. He made me kneel and bark. A sister helped me." Tears ran down her cheeks, but now mixed with righteous anger. Ms. Evans's face hardened. She turned to Dean Williams. "Is this true?" The dean stumbled over his words. We're still investigating. Can't take one side." "Investigating?" I scoffed. "Do I need to bring his friends here to reenact it for you?" I glanced at the cronies, still cowering in the corner. The moment they realized the spotlight was on them, they panicked.
"No, Dean."
"Ms. Evans. It was Marcus. He forced us." Dean Williams turned a livid shade of red. Ms. Evans drew a slow breath. "Dean, if this is accurate, Marcus Thorne's behavior is completely unacceptable. Zoe's approach may have been extreme, but context matters. Let's understand the whole situation before labeling it as mere violence. She then softened her tone for me. Zoe, I understand your feelings, but there are other ways to handle conflicts. Let's go to my office and talk. Marcus will be sent to the nurse first. I gave a small nod, deciding the confrontation was done for now. Pushing further would just create headaches. Fine, I said, adding, next time a minor disagreement occurs, I hope the response is faster and more effective. Not everyone will have extreme methods on standby. Ms. Evans nodded, slightly embarrassed. I took Lila's hand, and as we passed Dean Williams, I leaned close and said in a low voice only he could hear, Dean, I'm Zoe Hawthorne, the one recently found. Richard Hawthorne's daughter. If the Thorne family wants a discussion, tell them to contact my father directly. Dean Williams's pupils narrowed. He stared, frozen.
Whoa.
She dropped the rich daddy card. You fight fire with fire. The Thornes are rich, but the Hawthornes? Next level. LMAO his face. I didn't look back and walked away. The walk to the office was short. Ms. Evans asked a few gentle questions to calm us and assured a full investigation into Marcus's history of bullying. Her approach felt fair. When we returned, Lila stayed close, whispering, sister, thank you. I stopped, glancing at her. Don't thank me. Toughen up. Hit back if someone bullies you. If you can't handle it, call me. Her eyes blinked, still red, but her expression now held a spark of determination. She nodded vigorously. Back to class, I said. When we entered class 2, the chatter died instantly. Every student stared, a mix of awe, curiosity, and fear. I ignored them, sliding into the seat next to Lila, one that Richard had reserved for me. For the rest of the day, no one bothered her. Even glances were cautious, whispers dying when my eyes passed over them. Marcus and his core crew didn't appear. Rumor had it they were at home, recovering. Beneath the calm exterior of Blackwood Prep, ripples spread. Tales of how I defeated the Kingpin, made him bark, and confronted the Dean had traveled fast. Nicknames like the Demon, She-Devil, and Lila's bodyguard sister began to circulate. The comments streamed live, providing play-by-play and mapping the school's social hierarchy. When the final bell rang, I slung my empty backpack over my shoulder. Lila followed. Outside, the Hawthorne luxury car waited, Eleanor behind the wheel, worry written on her face. Zoe, Lila, are you okay? I heard what happened with Marcus. It's fine, I said, sliding in. Handled. Eleanor looked between us, lost for words. Lila, though red-eyed, appeared more composed. She sighed and got in. At home, Richard awaited in the living room, serious. Zoe, the dean called. You acted impulsively. Too violent. The Thorne family has already contacted me. They're displeased. I lounged on the sofa. Displeased? That their son didn't bully my sister properly? Or that I didn't kill him? You. Richard flinched at my tone. This isn't how civilized people act. Civilized? I laughed. Is letting your daughter be cornered and humiliated a civilized method? If so, your civilization's pretty cheap. Richard paled further. Eleanor tried to smooth things over. Zoe was protecting Lila. Marcus went too far. Lila added softly, Dad, it was Marcus, he bullied me. Sister defended me. Richard exhaled slowly, tone softening. I know you were wronged. Zoe, you just arrived. Don't make enemies unnecessarily. I will handle the Thorne family. But at school, you need to tone it down. No trouble. I'm asking. I didn't answer. Toning down depended entirely on whether anyone dared cross me again. The rich dad worries about reputation. Damage control mode, on. Like our girl could ever tone it down. Next victim, please. Just then, the butler appeared. Sir, madam, young Mr. Croft is here. Richard and Eleanor exchanged surprised glances, a flicker of respect and importance passing over their faces. Show him in, Richard said, straightening his posture.
A boy stepped in.
He wore the Blackwood Prep uniform, but it seemed to transform him. Tall, lean, strikingly handsome, and with an air of natural nobility. His presence cut through the warm, opulent room like a sharp gust of wind. The comments went into overdrive. OMG. The male lead, Chris Croft. His family eclipses both the Hawthornes and the Thornes. Cold, brilliant, unattainable. The legend himself. And now in the Hawthorne living room. Is he here for the MC? Or the fake heiress? Drama alert. Chris scanned the room, his gaze flicking briefly over Richard and Eleanor with a single nod before resting on me sprawled across the sofa. His expression was unreadable, almost like I was furniture, but perhaps a flicker of curiosity hid beneath his icy exterior. Richard welcomed him warmly. "Chris, what brings you here today?" Chris remained standing. His voice was cool and clear. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, I understand you've recently found your daughter." His gaze returned to me, sharp and deliberate. "My name is Chris Croft," he said evenly. "I'm acquainted with Marcus Thorne." The atmosphere stiffened. Richard and Eleanor tensed, while Lila instinctively inched closer to me. I raised an eyebrow, meeting Chris's cold gaze with a sly, provocative smirk. And the air felt frozen. Richard and Eleanor looked like deer caught in headlights, lips moving but words failing. Lila clutched my shirt, eyes wide. Comments exploded. "Holy crap. He's here for Marcus. The real boss has entered. The Crofts crush the Thorns. Big sis versus Croft power level. Can she handle this? Chris and Marcus are friends. Never heard that one. Uh-oh. First day, and she's poking a hornet's nest." Chris's voice cut through the tension, flat and controlled. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, I'd like to speak with Zoe alone." It wasn't a request. It was a command. Richard and Eleanor practically dragged a hesitant Lila from the room, gently closing the heavy wooden doors. The living room was now just me and the cold, composed air of the Croft family. I slouched, eyeing him more openly. Handsome, yes, but the icy aura made me want to punch him. He ignored my rudeness, taking the armchair across from me. Posture perfect, expression neutral, ready for the classic. "You dared touch my friend. What price will you pay?" speech. Instead, he moved suddenly, with a speed that stirred the air. Before I could even react, he lunged and bent down, wrapping both arms around my leg in a gesture completely at odds with his Ice Prince persona, almost reverent. Me. Comments. The live feed threatened to crash under the sheer number of question marks. Zoe. Chris's expression had shifted from icy to near-fanatic admiration. "Please teach me your techniques." I blinked. Did I stumble into the wrong story? "You said you knew Marcus Thorne?" I asked, trying to make sense of this. Chris nodded earnestly.
"Yes."
"He tried to steal my model plane in elementary school, so I beat him up. His father brought him to apologize. To confrontational acquaintance." Comments went wild. Confrontational acquaintance. So, he's not here to avenge Marcus, he wants to be her student. Character plot twist. Ice Prince turned martial arts fangirl. I looked down at his arms, still gripping my calf. "Right, so what exactly are you doing?" "I want you as my master," he said firmly, eyes blazing. "I saw what you did to Marcus and his friend today. 3 seconds, clean strikes, no showboating. That's real combat. Precise, effective, deadly. I've trained in boxing, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, hired masters, but it's never practical enough. What you do, that's the real thing. Teach me." I stared at his pleading, leg-hugging form. My brain stalled for a full 3 seconds. I tried to yank my leg free. No luck. The kid might look lean, but he was surprisingly strong. "Let go." I frowned. "Not until you agree." Chris's eyes were blazing, intense, like a noble dog staring at a juicy steak. "Why should I teach you?" I asked, irritation creeping in. "You look like glass. Can you even survive a punch?" "I can," Chris exclaimed. "I've trained my endurance and pain tolerance specifically for this. Whatever it takes, I'll do it if you teach me." Comments erupted. "LMAO, I'm dying. The Ice Prince throwing a tantrum to learn martial arts. Zoe just wanted a quiet campus reign, and now the Crown Prince is her leg warmer.
Say yes."
I want to see him cry from training. I studied the intensity in his eyes. Annoying as it was, his stubborn fervor was oddly compelling. At least he wasn't another phony rich kid. "All right," I said, switching tactics. "What's in it for me? An IOU from the Crown Prince of the Croft family. Is that valuable?" Chris's eyes lit up. "Anything. Money, resources, total control of Blackwood Prep, you name it." "Total control?" I scoffed. "You mean I don't already?" He paused, then nodded. "Fair point."
"Fine," I said.
"I'll teach you. But 3 rules. First," I said, raising a finger, "train exactly how I tell you. No whining, no complaining, no questioning. Take the hits and shut up." "Got it." Chris answered immediately. Second, this is self-defense and justice training, not bullying. Misuse it, and I'll personally revoke everything the hard way. I swear, he replied, solemn. Third, I said, my smile humorless. Besides protecting Lila, I need your family's connections to help me dig into something. 17 years ago, a certain hospital, a certain baby mix-up. I want the truth. Chris's gaze sharpened. Understood. I'll help. Good. I clapped him on the shoulder. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., backfield. Be on time, or don't bother showing up. Yes, master. Don't call me master. I waved him off. Zoe is fine. Yes, Zoe. His excitement made him glow despite the icy exterior. Comments went wild. She just recruited the top dog. Chris. Cold-blooded killer or fangirl in disguise. Master-disciple vibes. Throw away the key. 6 a.m. training? Can't wait. Eleanor peeked in. Dinner's ready. She froze at the scene, but I ignored her and left for the table. Chris quickly masked his excitement, slipping back into the prince persona, though the light in his eyes betrayed him. Dinner was tense. Richard and Eleanor nervously watched Chris and me. Lila nibbled quietly, eyes darting between us. Chris returned to his princely composure, but occasional glances at me were unnerving. Chris, about today, Richard ventured. Mr. Hawthorne, Chris interrupted politely. Zoe and I have an agreement. I'll handle the Thorne situation. You don't need to worry. Relief flooded Richard and Eleanor. Thank you, Chris. As for everything else, Chris added, turning to me as if asking permission, we proceed as planned. I ignored him, focused on my food. Questions lingered in the air, but no one dared press. After dinner, Chris leaned in. 6 a.m., backfield. See you then. I waved him off, silently telling him to scram. The next morning, 5:50 a.m., I walked onto the empty backfield. The air was crisp, the sky barely lit. Chris stood waiting, dressed for training. Comments were buzzing. The prince is actually here, and early. Not even straight A, dedication compares. Learning to fight for love, LMAO. Warm up. 10 laps, I commanded. He started immediately, steady pace, even breathing. Baseline fitness, solid. I leaned against the pull-up bar, mentally mapping the training plan. When he returned, sweat forming on his forehead, the real session began. Fighting is speed, precision, power, I explained, demonstrating. Forget flashy moves. Focus on shortest distance, fastest strike, maximum force. Find their center of gravity, their weak spots. Chris watched like a hawk. Now apply it. Attack. He came at me with a sharp, fast punch. I tilted my head, snatched his wrist, and swept his leg. Thud. Impressively, he twisted midair, rolled into a crouch, and was back on his feet in seconds. Not bad. You're too stiff. Stop holding back. You can't hurt me, I said. He attacked again, faster, smarter, angles more complex. The only sounds, the wind slicing past and his occasional grunt. Comments loved it. One-sided beatdown, but fair. Prince can take a hit. He's lasting. Big Sis's brutal simplicity equals love it. Half an hour later, Chris collapsed on the grass, drenched in sweat, a few bruises forming, but exhilaration shone in his eyes. That's it for today.
Think about it.
Same time tomorrow. Yes, he gasped, struggling to stand, eyes shining. In the days that followed, Blackwood Prep felt different. Marcus Thorne and his gang had officially transferred out, thanks to the Croft family flexing a little muscle. The bathroom incident? Erased from records. Dean Williams avoided me like the plague. Unofficially, my reputation as the demon was sealed. Even senior students gave me a wide berth. Lila's life changed almost overnight. She was still quiet, but she smiled more, her stutter softened, and no one dared touch her. Our training sessions on the backfield became routine. Chris was advancing at lightning speed, his natural talent paired with sheer determination. He dug into the hospital incident on my behalf, while I passed on every combat skill I knew. A month later, one evening, Chris asked to meet me on the school rooftop. The sun was bleeding gold across the horizon. He handed me a slim folder, eyes serious. Zoe, the hospital records are clean, too clean, as if they were scrubbed. But I traced the nurses on duty. One head nurse and her family emigrated shortly after you and Lila were born. Her funds were untraceable. The overseas account that paid her, after passing through shell companies, leads back to a domestic account. He paused, locking eyes with me. Belonging to a distant Hawthorne relative. Your adoptive mother's cousin. My head snapped up. My eyes were sharp, cold as steel. Comments exploded. Zoe crap. It was a conspiracy. The adoptive mom did it. To give her daughter luxury. But she didn't even treat Zoe well.
This is terrifying.
Then my phone rang. Lila's voice was frantic, choked with tears. Sister. The Eleanor and Dad, they're fighting. I heard. She said she did it on purpose. My stomach sank. I turned to Chris. Back to the Hawthorne house. Now. We arrived to chaos. Eleanor was collapsed on the floor, hair wild, makeup smeared. Richard's face was ashen, his voice raw. Lila cowered behind the staircase.
Why?
Eleanor. Why? Richard's words trembled. Zoe is our daughter. Our blood.
And you switched her?
Insane. Eleanor's face twisted with despair. Because of your mother. She demanded a healthy heir. But my Zoe, she was so small, the doctors feared she wouldn't survive. I was terrified. Afraid of losing everything. And the other baby, healthy, perfect. I was jealous. I switched them. She gestured at Lila. And this one? The girl I raised, timid, stuttering, useless. I regretted it. But it was too late. The truth hit like a hammer. It wasn't love. It was fear, jealousy, selfishness. Lila's warm family?
A lie.
I stepped over, shielding Lila behind me. I faced Richard and Eleanor. The show's over. How you clean this up is your problem. Then I looked at Lila. You coming with me or staying? Lila's tears hadn't vanished, but her resolve shone through. She grabbed my arm, voice trembling but firm. With you, sister. I nodded, taking her hand. Chris followed silently behind us. Before leaving, I bent close to Eleanor, voice low and cutting. I wasn't healthy either. I fought my way from the gutter. My strength? I earned it, punch by punch. And the healthy daughter you chose? You turned her into a canary in a gilded cage. Eleanor's eyes widened, drained of color. I didn't look back. Lila's hand in mine. We walked out of the house that should have been home. The sunset stretched our shadows long across the driveway. Sister, Lila whispered. Yeah, I want to learn how to fight. I smiled faintly. All right, backfield. Tomorrow morning. You're on.